Hey everyone, obviously you can tell what I'm going to be talking about today. Before I jump into that, I just want to give a quick shout out to everyone who watched and supported my last video. I really do appreciate it, and if you haven't seen that one yet, be sure to check it out here. Lately, I've been using 3 heroes in my ranked games with decent success: Morphling, Tidehunter, and Bristleback. The Tidehunter build I've been using has some of the strongest late game scaling and best talents in Dota. There are 3 key differences that separates this Tidehunter build from the current meta one we see: the facet choice, item builds, and position I'm playing it in. And just like my Morphling video, I'll break this into several key components with the timestamps popping up now. So a recent setting Valve put in the game in Dota Labs is a persistent range indicator, which when you turn it on, it allows you to keep ranges of items, spells, attack range, anything like that on the screen permanently. So if you hover over an ability, you usually do see a range indicator like this. But if you hit Alt and right click, it stays on the screen just at a much lower opacity, as you can see there. And this value also updates visually based on if any of these things change. So if you get 8th lens or your attack range goes up, or in Tide's case with Krill Eater, if he levels up, it does go up just a tiny bit like that. If you go up to level 30, you'll see a very big difference, and that stays on the screen permanently. The next thing I want to talk about is the Aghanim Shard. And if you haven't played Tide in a while, or if you're not even aware of the Aghanim Shard, it's a leash that slows you down to a max of 100 move speed. This includes if you're a hasted unit that can't be slowed like Lycan, or if you get a haste rune like this, you literally cannot outrun this thing. It stays on you and you have to destroy it with 4 attacks, whether you're melee or ranged. This is literally the reason Tide is as good as he is. People think of Tide as a blink ravage bot. He provides great stuns, he builds these auras. That's great and all, but quite literally, the shard is the reason he is so good. He can shut down so many heroes from Quap, Storm, any spirit hero, Puck, Slark, Anti-Mage. He can kite an Ursa, which is usually a really great counter, but he can completely kite him. And he has to either use his overpower attacks to destroy it or pop BKB. There is pretty much no other answer. You can also use your hero's model to block the anchor. Visually, they won't be able to see it, and if they do recognize they're chained, they will actually have a lot of trouble hitting the thing itself. And if you use this shard in combination with Heaven's Halberd, usually a really bad item, and really no one else buys it, it can force BKBs all the time. They have to do it or they will die. One final tip I have, which I think is pretty important to mention, as this video does go over Tide mid specifically as well as the safe lane. If you put 2 points in Kraken Shell, you can just cheese lanes really, really hard. So if you verse something like a Lina or a Quap mid, these heroes are really, really popular, right? If you put 2 points in Kraken Shell, you can literally just sit in the middle of the lane and they cannot deal with you. They have to use their nukes to harass you, and that's not enough if you have Morbid Mask. So you can sit in the middle, you can secure ranged, and then you can just piss off and go farm a neutral camp. It's really, really strong. So take 2 points of Kraken Shell at level 3 if you verse these right-click harass heroes in lane. This is a little less applicable to the safe lane version. Just to stress that, I would just go with Gush, 1 level of passive, and max Anchor Smash. But if you're playing at mid, I would nearly always do this if the mid laner is trying to harass me out with right clicks. So the build itself will always end up with the same items, but the way you build in the early to mid game for both safe and mid lane Tide is slightly different. You do end up building the same items, but the build order does matter a lot. So I'll quickly go over the safe lanes starting items compared to the mid. So we start with Stick and Gauntlet. This is because we're going to be using more mana and we're versing 2 heroes. So the chance that Stick actually provides a bit more value is much higher, as opposed to the mid build where you're just going a bit of regen and focusing on getting Morbid first. And just keep in mind, everything is set from left to right in terms of build order. So for the safe lane Tide, you're getting Boots and Morbid, where for mid you're going Morbid and Soul Ring, as you don't really need boots so bad. Just continuing onto the safe lane, so you go boots, Morbid, Soul Ring, clarities as you need them, phase boots and Mage Slayer. This is the core of the build there. And then for the mid, you're doing much the same, but again, you're just focusing on Morbid for sustain against the 1v1, Soul Ring so you can sustain Anchor Smash for the wave and neutral camps, and then you're trying to get Mage Slayer realistically as quick as possible, so you delay phase boots usually when you play it mid. You end up getting Senge and Shard, and this is a massive timing for the build. When you get these items, you can run at everything and you can farm their side of the map. Halberd you buy when they can get rid of the Shard. It's not even purchased for any other reason. I just get it so they cannot deal with the Shard. Senge and Yasha is also amazing if you're versing breaks like Viper, Hoodwink, PA. There's probably a few others that come to mind. I just can't think of them right now. We've also got the Shadowblade. Shadowblade's an interesting one. So Shadowblade I buy when I verse Doom, when I'm trying to hunt, when I'm trying to avoid something that could possibly kill me. So let's think of like Void Chronosphere, as I said, Doom as well. If you need to wait out a Viper ult, but you don't want to buy SNY for whatever reason, Shadowblade's also good. And as I just previously said, it's really good for hunting people and catching them with your Shard. Satanic is the best item of the build. It allows Anchor Smash to fully heal you, even if you just hit 1 or 2 targets. It is truly a game-changing item. We've got AC, so you can take advantage of your 20 and 25 talents, and this lets you siege better, increases your EHB through your armor, and lets your whole team siege better behind you as well. Silver Edge is just to upgrade your Shadowblade, and that's pretty much it. So a classic answer to Tide is Razor, and I wanted to include a small section just to help you deal with that as well. Additionally, I'll go over some situational choices for items. So every item is built left to right for the section about Razor. So we've got Phase Boots, Soul Ring, and Blade Mail. I would prefer to get a quick Blade Mail over Morbid, because if you just get linked, Morbid does nothing. So the idea is you get Blade Mail as soon as possible, and then you get Morbid afterwards to help recover farm. Force Staff is to bait and break link, so you can still show up into a fight and immediately turn and break the link. And then you can start building normal Tide items. So we go Mage Slayer at this point. This still does help with Razor. We just don't want to get it too quick, otherwise we will feel pretty useless against it. Hurricane Pike, if you're desperate, it will guarantee break the link if the guy doesn't have BKB. And then it's just usual Tide items from there. If you have Satanic, AC, and Silver Edge, you could likely kill him within the first few seconds of link. And you can always just break the link and then reset the fight right afterwards. So the situational items, I'll briefly give some words to some of these items. Maybe not all of them, but Harpoon for one is really good when you verse Warlock or Veno. They have unpurgeable slows. So you're basically looking at the draft and seeing if they have an unpurgeable slow, if you are getting kited in some way, maybe by Magnus Skewer, pushes you away. Bloodthorn is good if you're versing a high mobility draft. Let's say Queen of Pain. In the late game, you can use your Shard to lock her down. But maybe she goes to click it, she builds Yules, they build 1 or 2 Dispels. You will have an additional Disable through Bloodthorn, plus its attack speed, so you really cannot feel too bad about building that item. For Nullifier, it's probably a little hard to know when to pull the trigger on that one. I would say Lich Armor and Pugna are the main culprits of buying Nullifier. Anything else, I don't think you really need to buy it, but it does have its use in some games. You can also think about when you verse Ursa or Bloodseeker, they purge these heroes constantly, so that really helps deal with them. Agiblink is an absolute 6 slot that I would sell Phase Boots for if I need to get on top of people straight away, like a support or an important core target. And then the rest is just kind of random items I've built sometimes. Skadi can always be good if they have a heavy lifesteal draft or a spell lifesteal draft. Eternal Shroud's particularly useful if you can't Mage Slayer a whole team of magic damage. Like Zeus might outrange you, you might be in Sandstorm all the time and not know where he is, so it's good for that sort of thing. And BKB in particular is pretty much essential if you verse Disruptor and they have enough damage to burst you through Storm. So it's not always you verse Disruptor and it's a must buy, but it's a must buy if they catch you in Storm and say a PA jumps you with Break and then you're screwed. You really need BKB for those sort of games. That's pretty much it for all the items. Okay, and finally we have the talents. So you've got the 40 anchor smash damage. You're always taking this. It's more damage to right click with. It lets you one-shot range creeps and two-shot a wave with it. 30% anchor smash damage reduction is insane for a talent. This brings it up to 90%. And this basically means if any hero relies on base damage to kill you, they are doing no damage because of Kraken Shell. Something like a Medusa is really hard countered by this talent, as well as Morphling. At 20, Anchor Smash affects buildings, also works with your 15 talent exceptionally well. This actually destroys a main mechanic of Dota. It's so busted. If they glyph, the wave that goes into the tower will hardly take damage. And when I say will hardly take damage, I mean they will just not die. It doesn't even look like they're taking damage. So you can make the enemies waste glyph, you don't take damage, and your teammates don't take damage from a tower. 90% reduction, guys. It's broken. 25 to 50% chance of Anchor Smash on attack. This is why I say this guy is the most unbeatable late game. If you combine Anchor Smash affects buildings with 50% chance of Anchor Smash on attack, you just can siege buildings without your team. You'll see it in this clip here that I featured earlier. I'm able to destroy the enemy ancient with my whole team dead, actually knowing that they're dead before I even hit the high ground. I know I can end the game. This has a few busted interactions. If you're hitting a building, you are just going to lifesteal around everything that your Anchor Smash triggers on. And since you're taking Krill Eater, you have a massive AoE on Anchor Smash. So you can literally just sustain off of hitting buildings if they try and stop you. On top of this, you're applying Mage Slayer, you're reducing damage by 90%, and as I said, you're lifestealing. It is really hard to beat this timing. Okay, that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you've enjoyed. If there's any questions you have in regards to the build, as well as the Steam guide, I've actually made that and linked that below. You can check that out. Otherwise, put your questions in the comments or check me out on Twitch. Cheers.